Henry Caldwell stepped out of the back seat of his town car and into the biting Chicago wind. It was past midnight, and the downtown streets were nearly empty. His driver, Dani, rubbed her gloved hands together as she closed the car's door behind him. She was a black woman in her late 30s, normally poised despite the late hours, but tonight her eyes looked heavy with exhaustion. Henry tightened his wool coat and turned to Dani. "Same time tomorrow morning. Don't be late," he said flatly. His tone was as cold as the frosty air. Dani nodded quickly, clutching the thin jacket she wore. She had never once been late to pick him up, but Henry never bothered to remember details like that. As Henry began to walk toward the entrance of his luxury high-rise, he noticed Dani stifle a yawn. She tried to hide it, but he caught the small lapse. He frowned in irritation. "If you're falling asleep on the job, perhaps you should get more rest," he snapped, his voice echoing under the building's portico. The rebuke hung in the air. Dani's cheeks flushed with shame, and she lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry, sir," she murmured. He waved a dismissive hand. "Just be ready when I need you," Henry muttered. Without another word, he strode into the gleaming lobby, leaving Dani standing alone in the cold. Shame burned in her chest, but she whispered to herself that it would be all right. Outside, Dani watched the lobby doors close and let out a shaky breath. She checked the time and then glanced up and down the deserted street. Pulling her threadbare blanket from the car's trunk, she wrapped it tightly around her shoulders. The towering skyscrapers offered little shelter from the wind. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and each breath came out as a faint cloud. Still, Dani quietly moved toward a dark corner near the building where the overhang might shield her from the falling snow. Moments later, Henry realized he had left his briefcase in the car's back seat. Irritated at his own oversight, he decided to retrieve it immediately. He needed the papers inside for an early meeting. He exited his building's lobby into the frigid night once more. As he approached the parked town car, he noticed a huddled shape on the sidewalk by the side of the building. The shape was still, curled up against the wall with only a thin blanket and a small duffel bag. Henry squinted through the dim light of a street lamp. A sense of confusion and disbelief prickled through him. Something about the figure's posture looked familiar. He stepped closer, and the harsh beam of his phone's flashlight revealed the face of the person beneath the blanket. It was Dani. His driver, who had just dropped him off minutes ago, was now lying on the cold concrete, eyes closed, seemingly asleep on the street. Henry's heart skipped. For a moment, he simply stood there, stunned and unable to process what he was seeing. How could this be possible? Dani was supposed to be on her way home. Why would she be here like one of the city's homeless? At the sound of Henry's sharp intake of breath, Dani's eyes fluttered open. She looked up, dazed and then horrified as recognition dawned. Scrambling to sit up, she clutched the blanket around herself, clearly mortified. "Mr. Caldwell, she stammered, her voice choked with humiliation and cold. In that silent moment, boss and driver stared at one another, both shivering, not just from the cold, but from the truth hanging between them. Henry's mind raced, a million questions swirling in the icy night air. If this twist caught you off guard, subscribe to see justice unfold. Henry lay awake for hours after returning to his penthouse. His mind replayed the scene on the sidewalk over and over. Confusion gnawed at him, but so did an unexpected feeling of guilt. Henry Caldwell was a 56-year-old real estate mogul, a self-made millionaire known for his ruthless efficiency. He had built a commercial property empire by being unsentimental and demanding. Employees were tools to be used, not people to be understood. Yet now, the image of his trusted driver curled up on frozen concrete was all he could think about. By dawn, the city streets glittered with a thin layer of snow. Henry hadn't managed much sleep. He finally got dressed in a crisp suit, determined to face the situation head on. Stepping out of his building's lobby that morning, he found Dani waiting dutifully by the town car, just as she did every day. The car's engine was running, and a plume of exhaust smoke billowed in the cold air. Dani stood at attention, her breath visible in the frosty morning light. Henry paused, studying her through the steam of his coffee. She was here, on time as always, despite spending the night in the elements. Dani's Navy chauffeur uniform was neatly pressed, but he noticed she wore the same thin jacket from last night. The skin under her eyes was slightly puffy from lack of sleep. She had smoothed her hair back tightly, perhaps to look professional, yet a few strands had frozen into tiny icicles by her temples. Henry felt a tug of empathy he wasn't used to. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," Dani said softly, opening the rear door for him. Her voice was polite, as if the night before had never happened. Henry cleared his throat, unsure how to respond. "Morning," he replied, climbing inside. For a minute, an awkward silence hung in the warm car. Henry wanted to ask if she was all right, if she had found somewhere warmer to go after he left. But the words failed him. He only managed, "Are you doing okay today, Dani?" Dani met his eyes in the rearview mirror briefly, then looked back to the road. "Yes, sir, I'm fine," she said with a practiced calm. Her hands on the steering wheel were steady, but Henry noticed she was wearing a pair of fingerless gloves. Her knuckles were red from the cold. Fine, he thought. How could she possibly be fine? As the car merged into traffic, Henry's mind churned. Dani was clearly pretending everything was normal, and he, who normally never pried into personal affairs, felt a pressing need to know why his employee had nowhere to go. Was she in some kind of trouble? Was she hiding something like debt? Or had she lost her home? The questions swirled, and Henry realized with a touch of doubt that he might have misjudged this woman completely. At the office drop-off, Dani opened Henry's door with her usual respectful demeanor. "I'll be here at 6 p.m. to take you home, sir," she said. Henry stepped out, then hesitated. "Dani?" he began, his voice unusually gentle. She looked up, eyes wary but attentive. Henry almost asked about her living situation, but at the last second, he balked. He simply nodded and finished. "Thank you. Drive safe today." The words were mundane, but his tone betrayed concern. Dani offered a polite smile, confused by his change in manner. All day, Henry's focus drifted in and out of his work. In the gleaming conference room of Caldwell Properties, Inc., he struggled to concentrate on figures and charts. While a team of executives discussed quarterly earnings, Henry's thoughts wandered back to Dani. He remembered hiring her 2 years ago through a car service. She had been punctual and quiet, and he'd appreciated that. He realized with a jolt that he knew almost nothing about her life. He had never cared to ask. By early evening, Henry found himself back in his office, alone with the dimming light of dusk filtering through the skyscraper windows. Unable to ignore his curiosity any longer, he opened the employee records on his computer. It took only a few minutes to pull up Danielle Moore's file. As he skimmed through, Henry's eyes widened. Dani wasn't always a driver. She had listed a previous occupation, registered nurse at a city hospital. She left the position in 2020. Henry sat back in his chair, running a hand through his gray hair. Why would a former nurse be driving his car for a living? According to her resume, Dani had excellent references, even an award for patient care. There was no indication of wrongdoing or a bad record. The only remark was that she'd left due to hospital budget cuts during the pandemic. Henry felt a pang of recognition. 2020 had been brutal in many ways. Scrolling further, he saw her emergency contact, a younger brother, and a note that her mother was listed in a nursing home. Her listed home address was on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood known for low-income housing. Henry realized it might not even be current. A sinking feeling hit him as he considered the possibility that Dani had lost her home and never updated her file out of fear of losing her job. That night, as Henry left the office, he was greeted by the familiar face of Carl Thompson, the night security guard, in the lobby. Carl, 62, had a kind but weathered face and tipped his cap respectfully. Normally, Henry barely noticed him, but today, Henry paused. Carl had witnessed Henry's late return the night before. Perhaps he knew more. Henry approached the security desk. "Evening, Carl," he said quietly. Carl looked a bit surprised. Henry rarely made small talk. "Good evening, Mr. Caldwell," Carl replied. Henry glanced around to ensure they were alone. "About last night," Henry began, keeping his voice low. "You were on duty, right? Did you see my driver after I went upstairs?" Carl straightened, concern flickering in his eyes. "Yes, sir, I did." He hesitated, then decided to be honest. "After you went in, I noticed Ms. Moore didn't drive away. I found her around the side of the building. I offered to let her sit in the lobby to warm up, even suggested calling her a cab, but she insisted she was all right. She left before dawn." Henry's jaw tightened. Carl had effectively confirmed that last night was not a one-time fluke. Dani had intended to sleep out in the cold. "Did you know she was doing this?" Henry asked, an edge of frustration in his tone, frustration at the situation and perhaps at himself for being oblivious. Carl shook his head slowly. "Not for sure, sir, but I've had a feeling something was off for a while," he admitted. "Some nights she'd park the car and linger. A few times I noticed she was still in the area late, like she had nowhere urgent to be. I didn't pry. She's a proud person, always polite, always says she's fine." Henry exhaled, a cloud of breath forming in the chilly lobby entrance where they stood. He realized Carl's instincts had been kinder than his own. While Henry had never paid attention, Carl had quietly observed the signs. "Why didn't you report this to anyone?" Henry asked, though his tone lacked the bite it might have on another day. Carl looked down. "With respect, Mr. Caldwell, she wasn't doing anything against the rules, and I figured if she wanted help, she'd ask. I tried to help in little ways. Once I gave her a spare blanket that was in Lost and Found. She thanked me, but she never explained her situation. I thought it wasn't my place to force her." Henry nodded slowly. He felt a mix of relief and regret that at least someone had shown Dani a bit of kindness. "Thank you, Carl," he said quietly. Carl's eyes showed empathy as he added, "Sir, she's a good person, works hard. I'm worried about her." As Henry stepped out to meet Dani at the curb for his ride home, Carl's words echoed in his mind. A good person. Henry climbed into the back seat. where Dani was patiently waiting. The drive began in silence, city lights streaking past the windows. Henry realized his own doubts had shifted. No longer did he doubt Dani's character. He doubted his own judgments. He had to know the truth of why a woman like her had ended up in such a state, and he needed to make it right. By the time they reached his building, Henry had made a decision. He wasn't going to ignore this, and he certainly wasn't going to let Dani spend another night on the street under his watch. As Dani pulled up and put the car in park, Henry spoke up, voice firm but not unkind. "Dani, tomorrow I want you to come up to my office at noon. We need to discuss a few things." Dani's hands froze on the steering wheel for a fraction of a second. She glanced back at him, her face carefully neutral. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell," she replied softly. "Did I do something wrong?" Henry shook his head. "Number, just be there, please." He left no room for argument, but managed a tight smile. Dani nodded, though worry flickered in her eyes. Henry stepped out of the car, aware that he'd left her with uncertainty. He hated adding to her stress, but it was necessary. As he watched her drive off into the dark, Henry felt a strange resolve hardening within him. He was determined to uncover the truth behind Dani's secret, whatever it turned out to be. The next day at noon, Dani stepped nervously into Henry's spacious corner office. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind his desk, the Chicago skyline stretched under a pale winter sun. Dani clutched her hat in her hands, unsure why she'd been summoned. Henry gestured for her to sit, offering a faint, reassuring smile. "First, I want to thank you for your hard work," Henry began, folding his hands on the polished mahogany desk. Dani blinked in surprise. Praise was the last thing she expected. "You've been with me for 2 years, and your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed." His voice was calm, measured, but his eyes were studying her reaction. Dani relaxed slightly in the chair, though her back remained straight. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. Henry cleared his throat and continued, "I realize I haven't expressed my appreciation enough. I'd like to offer you a performance bonus for your excellent service." He slid a plain white envelope across the desk toward her. Dani's eyes widened as she picked it up. Inside, she saw a check, and her breath caught. It was significantly more than she earned in a month. Her first instinct was to refuse. She hadn't done anything special to merit such generosity. "Sir, this is very kind, but—" she began, her voice faltering. Henry raised a hand gently. "Please, I insist. Consider it long overdue recognition. You've earned it." He offered her a small smile, trying to convey that it was all right. Dani looked down at the check again, her vision blurring slightly. In that moment, Henry noticed the conflict in her expression, gratitude mixed with hesitation and pride. After a long pause, Dani nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice sincere and a little unsteady. "This means a lot." She carefully tucked the envelope into her bag. Henry felt a wave of relief that she accepted it. He hoped it would help her, though he still yearned to know the full story. As Dani stood to leave, he gave her one last chance to open up. "If there's ever anything you need or any way I can help, you'll tell me, won't you?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. Dani met his gaze and managed a polite smile. "Of course, sir," she replied. "I'm fine, but I appreciate it." With that, she excused herself from the office. Henry watched her go, feeling both frustrated and admiring of her resilience. Even now, she wouldn't burden him with her problems. That evening, Henry decided to follow his driver at a distance, determined to find out how Dani truly lived. He left the office early and donned a simple black overcoat and a cap instead of his usual tailored suit, an attempt to appear inconspicuous. When Dani dropped him off at his building at 5 p.m., he thanked her and told her she could have the rest of the evening off. Dani raised an eyebrow in surprise at the unexpected early dismissal, but nodded. "Have a good night, Mr. Caldwell," she said as he exited the car. Henry watched from the lobby windows as Dani's car merged into traffic. A moment later, he hurried to the parking garage where his own sedan awaited. Though he rarely drove himself, tonight he wanted no chauffeur, no one else involved. As the twilight settled, he tailed the town car at a careful distance through the city streets. Dani drove south, far from the upscale neighborhoods Henry frequented. Block by block, the scenery grew poorer. Shabby storefronts and aging apartment buildings lined the streets. After about 20 minutes, Dani parked near a small strip mall in a working-class part of town. Henry pulled over down the block, killing his headlights. From his car, he watched Dani walk into a storefront with a flickering neon sign that read, "Money transfer and bills payment." Henry's heart thumped. Why here? He slipped out of his sedan and quietly approached, stopping just outside the doorway. Through the glass, he saw Dani at the counter talking to a clerk. In her hands, she held the white envelope he had given her. Henry's breath clouded the glass as he strained to listen. Inside, the weary clerk was saying, "Send in the whole amount? You sure you don't want to keep anything, hon?" "Yes, all of it," Dani replied firmly. "Please send it to the address on file for account number 2047. Yes, that's right." Her voice was resolute. Henry realized with a jolt that she was wiring virtually the entire bonus somewhere. The clerk gave a sympathetic nod and began processing the transaction. Henry stepped back, perplexed and filled with a deepening respect. She wasn't using the money for herself at all. A few minutes later, Dani exited the store, wrapping her coat tight against the chill wind. Henry quickly ducked behind a parked car. He watched as she stood on the sidewalk, pulled out her cell phone, and dialed a number with trembling fingers. He could hear snippets of her conversation in the quiet street. "Hi, Joey. I just sent the payment. You should have it soon," she said, her voice gentle. A young man's voice crackled faintly on the other end, audible to Henry only in tones, not words. "No, don't worry. It's enough to cover Mom's hospice for this month and the next. Make sure she gets everything she needs, okay?" Dani continued. She fell silent, listening, and Henry saw her wipe a tear from her eye with the back of her hand. After a moment, she spoke again, voice wavering with emotion. "I promise I'm all right. The job is good. My boss has been good to me," she managed, glancing unconsciously up the street as if afraid to be overheard. Henry felt his throat tighten. Dani's next words were softer, and he had to strain to catch them on the wind. "Just take care of each other. I'll figure things out here. Love you. Give Mom a kiss from me. I'll try to visit soon." Dani ended the call and pressed the phone to her chest for a long moment, her breath visible in uneven puffs. In the dim glow of a street lamp, Henry could see the shine of tears on her cheeks before she quickly wiped them away. She squared her shoulders against the cold and exhaustion, preparing to head off, likely to find a place to spend the night. Henry stood frozen a few paces away, hidden in the shadows between two parked cars. Revelation struck him like a lightning bolt. Now he understood. Dani was homeless because she was sacrificing everything for her family. Every hard-earned dollar she made driving him went to keep her sick mother cared for and to support her younger brother. She had lost her own home and comfort so that they would not lose theirs. A deep shame mingled with admiration inside Henry. He felt his eyes sting, an unfamiliar moisture welling up. This proud, quiet woman had been carrying a burden no one saw, all while he had scolded her for yawning on the job. Henry realized that in his life of luxury, he had never encountered a sacrifice of this magnitude. It shook him to his core. As Dani walked off into the night, head down against the wind, Henry's hands trembled. He wanted to call out to her, to apologize right then and there, but the words caught in his throat. He let her disappear around the corner, not wanting to reveal he had followed her. Instead, he turned back toward his own car, heart heavy but determined. He now knew the full truth, and he knew what he had to do. He would not let Danielle Moore spend another night out in the cold. If Dani's sacrifice moved you, share what you feel in the comments. The following morning, Henry asked Dani to meet him a bit later than usual, at 9 a.m., in front of his building. Dani arrived promptly, the town car polished and ready as always. But instead of instructing her to drive, Henry greeted her on the sidewalk with an unexpected warmth in his eyes. Carl, the night security guard, lingered nearby finishing a shift, curious to see why the boss was outside in the cold. Henry approached Dani not as an employee, but as someone he deeply respected. "Good morning, Danielle," he said gently, using her first name with a softness that took her aback. "Walk with me for a minute?" Dani's stomach flipped with anxiety. Had she done something wrong? Why wasn't he getting in the car? She stole a glance at Carl, who offered her an encouraging nod. Nervously, she fell into step beside Henry as they moved a few paces away on the sidewalk. Snow from the night before crunched under their feet. Henry took a breath, seeing the apprehension on Dani's face. "I owe you an apology," he began sincerely, "for a lot of things. For not noticing what you were going through, and for how I spoke to you the other night." His voice was heavy with remorse. "No one deserves to be belittled, especially not someone as hard-working and honorable as you." Dani's eyes widened and immediately grew glossy with tears. "Sir, you don't have to," she started, but Henry shook his head. "Please, let me finish," he continued. "I learned that you've been carrying a tremendous burden alone. You sacrificed your own comfort and safety for your family. That's beyond admirable. It's extraordinary. And all this time I was too blind to see it." Henry's voice nearly broke, but he steadied himself. "You showed me what true selflessness looks like." Dani's tears spilled over, rolling down her cheeks. She looked away, embarrassed, and quickly brushed them aside. "I never wanted to cause trouble at work. I'm sorry if I—" She tried to explain, but Henry gently raised his hand. "No, you have nothing to be sorry for," he said firmly. "If anything, I should be thanking you for your dedication and for reminding me of the values I'd forgotten." He glanced towards Carl, who watched with quiet approval. "Carl and I were both worried about you. We just want to help." Dani bit her lip, trying to suppress a sob. She had been strong for so long, but hearing these words of compassion from the man she thought would never understand was almost too much. "I didn't know anyone noticed," she whispered. Henry managed a small smile. "I notice now, and I intend to make things right." He reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out a brass key. "I own a furnished apartment a few blocks away. It's empty at the moment, and I'd like you to use it for as long as you need." Dani stared at the key in disbelief. "Mr. Caldwell, I can't just take an apartment," she protested, her voice shaking. "It's not charity," Henry assured, pressing the key into her hand. "Consider it a company accommodation or part of your benefits. You need a safe place to rest. Please." His eyes were earnest, almost pleading. Dani gazed at the key, her breath hitching. The thought of a warm bed and a roof over her head, something she had secretly longed for each freezing night, suddenly felt within reach. "Thank you," she breathed, clutching the key tightly. Her composure cracked then. A sob escaped her throat. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Henry gently rested a hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "There's more," he said softly. "I spoke with my accountants this morning. From now on, your mother's medical and hospice expenses are going to be covered by a fund my company has for community support. It turns out we can help with cases like hers." For a moment, Dani was sure she hadn't heard correctly. She felt faint. You're going to help with my mom's bills?" she asked in astonishment. Her knees nearly buckled, and Henry subtly offered his arm to steady her. "Yes," Henry affirmed. "You shouldn't have to bear that alone. And one more thing." He smiled kindly. "You mentioned in your resume that you were a nurse. If you ever want to return to that calling, I will support you. I can make some calls. Friends of mine own clinics and hospitals. When you're ready, we can find you a position that values your talents. But that's entirely up to you. You have a job with me for as long as you want it, regardless." Dani was openly crying now, unable to hold back the torrent of emotion, relief, gratitude, and overwhelming joy. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined this turn of events. She tried to speak, but only a shaky laugh came out as she wiped her face. I don't know what to say," she managed finally. "You've changed my life." Henry felt a sting of tears in his own eyes and did not fight them. In that moment, he didn't care if anyone saw. He gently took Dani's hand in both of his. "You changed mine first," he replied, his voice thick. "I'm just trying to do the right thing, something I should have done long ago." Carl stepped forward quietly, offering Dani a clean handkerchief from his pocket. She accepted it with a grateful nod and dabbed her eyes. Carl's own smile was broad and teary as he witnessed the scene of justice and kindness unfolding. Under the gray morning sky on that Chicago sidewalk, a profound change had taken place. The invisible barriers of status and pride had melted away. Dani felt seen and valued, and Henry felt something in his heart thaw that he hadn't realized was frozen. That day, instead of driving Henry to work, Dani allowed Henry to drive her, insisting it was her turn to sit in the back and relax. They laughed together at the role reversal as the car pulled away, heading not to the office, but to the new apartment so Dani could see her home to be. It was the start of a fresh chapter for both of them, one defined by mutual respect, understanding, and second chances. In the end, compassion had prevailed, and both Henry and Dani found redemption in its embrace. Subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories of hope and second chances.